Welcome to another Cardano update. Like always, make sure to check out our YouTube memberships and our Patreon if you want access to all of our charts and if you want access to our daily Discord update, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So like always, Cardano is not really doing anything, and because of that I will take a look at the weekly chart in this video. Now I will not talk about the Elliott wave count too much because I don't want to do that right now. I've already talked about that multiple times. In this video I want to talk about QE and QT. And I mean, right now we are still in QT, and I have put this on the chart. What is this new thing on the chart? Well, this shows us if it's QE or QT, and basically if it goes down, it means we are in QT, and if it goes up, like it went up right here, it means we are in QE. And yeah, right now we are in QT, and this usually means that the altcoins cannot really go up. I mean, in the previous cycle when we were in QT, for example right here, Cardano, pretty much kept putting in new lower lows. However, we were in a very similar structure to the structure that we are in right now. Like I told you multiple times in my previous couple of videos, well, I even told you this like 6 months ago. This 1-2 setup looks very similar to this 1-2 setup. And this move right here, this 1-2 setup, looks very similar to the 1-2 setup that we have right now on the chart. And what do I want to say with this? Well, the structure keeps repeating itself, and I think that if we are actually up here, then I think the Cardano will most likely do this right here. Now I know I said that this 1-2 setup looks very similar to the 1-2 setup that we had right here, and this would make sense. However, you have to keep in mind that this structure that we have, well, right now it seems that we are down here rather than up here. So maybe this is not this 1-2 setup. Maybe we are actually, down here, and we're about to do the exact same thing with it in the previous cycle. However, keep in mind, in the previous cycle we were already in QE when we had this move. Right now we are not, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next. Now, before I talk about the QT and QE stuff, I want to talk about the bull market support band, and I actually want to take a look at how the bull market support band looks like right here. And why is that important? Well, because we are about to have a cross on the bull market support band, and I've told you this multiple times, getting a cross on the Cardano bull market support band is not the best thing in the world. However, there is a different scenario, and one time when Cardano had a cross on the bull market support band and it was not bearish was up here, well, actually down here. And as you can see, we had a cross, and Cardano during that time actually tested the bull market support band multiple times, and I believe from this cross to the next cross it only took about 46 days. And yeah, Cardano did not really suffer because of that. Now, I mean, what happened up here? Well, like I said, we were in a higher high structure and we kept breaking above the previous highs. As you can see, we actually tested the trend line right here 4 times before we actually did anything. Now, how many times did we test it so far? Well, we actually tested it here for the first time, then here, and now we tested it for the 4th time. And we got rejected. So if we are actually here instead of, down here, then we should get a bounce relatively soon, and that should put us back above the bull market support band. Now keep in mind, in the previous cycle when we had the cross on the bull market support band, we went sideways for quite some time, for about 2 months I would say, and then we started going up. Could this happen again? Well, I think it can, and this is when I'm going to talk about QE and QT because I think it's relevant. So if we ignore the wave count and if we only focus on the structure, then yes, we are most likely here instead of, down here. However, the Elliott wave count already suggests that we are in a second wave of the third wave. And you only look at the QE and QT stuff on the chart, then you could also say that maybe we are actually down here instead of, up here. Now, why am I saying that? Well, because down here, yes, we were already in QE. However, this drop that we had happened after the 1-2 setup right here. And what do you know? We had a 1-2 setup here, then we went up just like we did over here, and then we had a huge 70% drop. Well, this was an 80% drop. So I think this structure looks a lot more similar to what we have right now, rather than if we were to say that, yeah, maybe we are already up here. So even though this move happened during a halving year, keep in mind we were already in QE when this happened. Right now we are not in QE. And what really triggered the, QE to actually start? Well, the pandemic drop. As you can see, after we had this huge pandemic drop, we actually got a huge pump on the total assets charts. And why is that? Well, because people were panicking, and when people are panicking, that's when QE starts. Right now, people are panicking, and I think we're very close to getting QE because, we had a 70% drop on most coins. Well, not all of them, but some of them had a 70% drop. Now, Bitcoin did not drop, and I think that's why we did not start QE yet. And keep in mind, the Fed meeting is next month, so unless we get some kind of emergency meeting right now, there is a chance that we just continue being in QT until March. And if QT does not end in March, there is a chance that Cardano and the other altcoins will actually top at the beginning of 2026 rather than by the end of 2025. Because if you look at what happened in the previous cycle before 2021, which is 2017, the altcoins actually topped in January of 2018. Now, I want to look at another chart that was in that altcoin season, which is the 2017 altcoin season, and I think a good, chart would be the Dogecoin chart. This was the coin that was around for that market. So now if you look at this chart, as you can see, Dogecoin, starting in March of 2017, it had a huge pump to the upside, and this pump stopped in May, and then after that we went down until pretty much September. And then it actually topped in January of 2018, which is, a bear market for Bitcoin. I mean, during this time, Bitcoin was actually dropping. Well, not really. It was still, near all-time highs. But as you can see, I mean, it was still going down. It went down from like 19K all the way down to like $9,000. And during this time, Dogecoin and some other altcoins that were around during that time were actually going up. So there is a chance that in this cycle, we are doing what we did in 2017 rather than what we did in the previous cycle. And if that's the case, there is a slight chance that, Bitcoin still tops by the end of the year. I still think that will happen. And then in January of next year, that's when the altcoins get a huge pump to the upside, and then we top on the altcoin charts, and that would be it. Now, I'm not really a fan of that idea, but if QE does not start in March, there is a very huge chance that it happens. Now, keep in mind, in the previous two cycles, we actually had a huge pump on the altcoin charts starting at the end of February of the post-halving year. For example, here in the post-halving year in February, which I mean it's right here, as you can see in February we started a pump, and that pump lasted until May of 2021. Now this is Dogecoin chart, this is not the Cardano chart, but as you can see, I mean it started going down in May, and what in the cycle before that, it's the exact same thing. We started going up at the end of February of the post-halving year, and then we started, going down in May, and then we had another local top. Well, we actually had another all-time high at the beginning of next year. Now, in the cycle after that, we actually topped, well, at least on the Cardano chart, we actually topped in August of 2021, which is before Bitcoin topped. So this shows us that the altcoins can actually top before or after Bitcoin, depending on, what point we're in the cycle and what the altcoins are doing. But this shows us that even if the altcoins are somehow late to the party and they do not really go up a lot, that does not mean that they will not get a pump. This only means that they will get a pump, but they will get it later than Bitcoin, for example. And I think that's very bullish. Keep in mind right here on the Cardano chart, yes, we started QE and Cardano went up from like 2 cents all the way to like 17 cents. But the real altcoin season started in the post-halving year, and yes, we were in QE, but like I said, the real altcoin season started at the end of February of the post-halving year, and maybe that's what we will do in this cycle. Now, I'm sorry if, everything I say is a bit confusing, but I swear it makes sense, and I want to look at the Bitcoin dominance chart as well, because I know many of you like this chart. And I want to take a look at when Bitcoin dominance actually topped in the previous cycle. So as you can see, when it topped, we were already in QE. However, if you take a look at what happened after QE started, Bitcoin dominance actually went down quite a lot. It had a 16% correction, and then we had another top. Now, why did we have another top? Well, because usually, in the cycle before that, Bitcoin dominance topped in the post-halving year, not in the halving year or in the year before that. So I think Bitcoin dominance was just not ready to top, and that's why we had another top during QE. However, in this cycle, I think things will be different, and I still think that once QE starts, Bitcoin dominance will start doing something like this, because, we did it over here. After we started QE, Bitcoin dominance dropped like 16%, and I still believe that something like that will happen again. However, once that happens, I'm not expecting Bitcoin dominance to do this and then get another top, because it would just not make sense from the 4-year cycle point of view, which means that once we start QE, we should start going down immediately, and we should never really get another thing like this over here, because like I said, it would not make sense from a 4-year cycle point of view. So what do I want to tell you with this? Well, what you need to know is that in the previous cycle, Bitcoin dominance stopped at pretty much the beginning of January of the post-halving year. In this cycle, we are in February, and Bitcoin dominance just put in a new cycle high, and we are still not in QE. However, if we start QE right now or next month, I think Bitcoin dominance will top by then, and then we start going down, and that's what will trigger the altcoin season. And that would make sense because in the previous 2 cycles, the altcoin season actually started at the end of February or even March. And yeah, there is a chance that we do the exact same thing again in this cycle, and this right here was just a big fake out, and I'm still expecting the altcoin season to happen no matter what. Like I said, the altcoins should be near all-time highs by the end of May, at least judging this by what happened in the previous 2 cycles. Like I said, we started dropping in February or in March, and by the time we were in May, Bitcoin dominance was already down quite a lot. I mean, here for example, in 2017, Bitcoin dominance went down like 30% during that time, and in the previous cycle, I mean, let's say from March to about May, Bitcoin dominance dropped what, about 25%? So yeah, Bitcoin dominance can drop a lot once QE starts, and I think that will happen very, very soon. Now, if we don't get QE in March, then that's going to be a problem, because Bitcoin, like I said, will most likely top by the end of 2025. And if we actually want an altcoin season, then we kind of have to start QE this year and, not next year or so. Now, of course, I'm not really expecting to stay in QT until, next year, but you never know, and you have to be, prepared for these things. Now, I'm still expecting Bitcoin dominance to go down, so it's really difficult to say what might happen next, but if history is any indication, then this means that Bitcoin dominance has already topped and that we're about to go down once QE actually starts. And yeah, going back to the Cardano chart, Cardano is still in an uptrend, and like I said, this uptrend right here looks very similar to the uptrends that we were in when we were doing this right here. And what do you know, we tested this trend line multiple times, and at some point we broke above it, and that's what triggered the altcoin season. And keep in mind, we broke above this trend line in the post-halving year. So I think the stars are finally starting to, align, and people are already giving up on Cardano and the altcoins, and this is funny because this happens every single cycle. People already start, giving up on the altcoins when Bitcoin dominance is at cycle highs, and then when Bitcoin dominance finally starts dropping, that's when people start buying altcoins, and they buy too late. They buy altcoins when Bitcoin dominance is down like 25%, and I mean that's what happened in the previous cycle. People bought Cardano after Bitcoin dominance went down like 25% over here. And in May of 2021, Cardano, I believe, was at about, about $2, and people bought the stop thinking that, it would go higher, even though it made most sense when you looked at the Bitcoin dominance chart. Of course, it could have gone down a bit more, but it probably would have not gone down much lower than what it already did. And yes, we did get another low, but this was nothing too significant, and from this low to this low right here, it's only like a 1% difference. So as you can see, Bitcoin dominance usually gets a 20 to 25% drop starting in February of the post-halving year, and that drop usually ends in May, and then we get a huge, correction for the chart because it cannot really go down forever. It has to get a corrective, move to the upside. And yeah, now for people complaining about Cardano not being at all-time highs already, you have to keep in mind that exactly 4 years ago, Cardano was actually not at all-time highs. Now, of course, it started going up in February, but to keep in mind, during this time, we were already in QE. Right now, we are not in QE. So I know I've been comparing every single thing that happened in this cycle to what happened in the previous cycle, but I think that's unfair to do right now because we are still not in QE, and until QE starts, I don't think it's, reasonable to compare, the 1-2 setup here to the 1-2 setup here, because we are in a much different scenario right now. And I would much rather focus on, waiting for QE to actually start until actually giving you another prediction. But my price predictions remain the exact same. I still think that Cardano will be at about $5 by the end of May. And if it's not above the previous all-time high by the end of May, then we will most likely, only hit about $5 by the end of the cycle, which is still not bearish, but, Cardano can do a lot more than that. And even if the altcoin season does not start at the exact same time it did in the previous cycle, that does not mean that we will not have an altcoin season. That only means that we will have it, but later in the year, or maybe, at the beginning of next year, like it happened in the cycle before this cycle. I mean, here, for example, Cardano topped in January of 2018. So there's a chance that something like this happen again. Now I know this video is already very long, but I want to look at the ADA Bitcoin chart as well. And as you can see, I mean here, when we were in QT, that's when, ADA Bitcoin was going down. And once we started QE, that pretty much confirmed that the ADA Bitcoin low was already in. Now we tested the low multiple times, but we never really got back below it. And right now we're still going down, we're still in QT, which means that there is a possibility that we get another low on the ADA Bitcoin chart before we continue. Now, I would not really like to see that because, like I said, the structure that we have right here, this 1-2 setup, looks very similar to this 1-2 setup that we had in the previous cycle. And I mean, even what happened before that, which is this right here, this huge correction, which could be a B wave. I mean, we had this right here as well. So I don't think we'll get another low on the ADA Bitcoin chart, but it's definitely a possibility, and it could happen if QE does not start in March of 2024, well, 2025, and you have to be aware of that right now. However, if QE starts, then we should do something like we did over here, and ADA Bitcoin should finally get to these targets. So somewhere between 2,700 Satoshis and 4,000 Satoshis. I don't think we'll break the previous all-time highs, because it would not make sense. I mean, in 2021, we did not break the 2018 all-time highs, so we'll most likely keep, reacting to the trend line right here, the non-existent trend line that I don't have on the chart. And I think it's realistic to say that ADA Bitcoin will top somewhere in this region right here, because, in the previous cycle, the fifth wave of the ADA Bitcoin chart actually topped at the 200% extension of the first wave. And right now, the 200% extension of the first wave right here is at about 4,000 Satoshis. And if we get to like 4,000 Satoshis and Bitcoin gets to like $255,000 by the end of the cycle, which I believe is very realistic, then ADA during this time will actually be at like $8 or so, which is quite a lot. So I think it's very bullish, and I think ADA is still, on track. And keep in mind, exactly 4 years ago, we were still down like 60% or 50% from the previous all-time highs, and right now it's the exact same thing. And we are not even in QE, so the fact that Cardano is getting these huge pumps and we are not even in QE is actually very bullish, because once QE starts, Cardano will just go to the moon, in my opinion. Now, that's just my opinion, and of course, Cardano will not be the only altcoin to go to the moon. I mean, when Bitcoin dominance starts dropping, that's when all of the altcoins usually go up, with a couple of exceptions, of course. And I think this cycle will be no different. And for the people complaining about the fact that we, did not start the altcoin season yet, you have to at least, thank the chart that we are not near cycle lows, because we are not in QE. And like I said in the previous cycle, the bear market low, I mean, it happened during QT. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind. I know this video is very long, and I know not many people are going to watch it, but I think that what I said in this video is actually very important, and you have to understand what's going on in the market, and you have to understand that we are not too late, and Cardano and the other altcoins are still doing fine, in my opinion. They are still respecting support levels, and the Elliott wave count is still valid. Like I said, I'm still expecting a third wave very soon, and the minimum target for this is like $3, but that's only the minimum target. And in the cycle before that, I mean in 2021, the third wave of this 1-2 setup right here actually got above the 1.618 extension of the previous all-time high. And in this cycle, if we do the exact same thing, that's why I think that Cardano will be at about $5 by the end of May, because in the cycle before that, the third wave of Cardano actually topped in May. I have already talked about this at the beginning of the video. Altcoins usually go up, in March, April, and May, and then they start going down in May, and they go up again at the end of the year. So if we are not at like $5 by the end of May, then the third wave will most likely finish whenever May starts, and wherever we are in May, I think that will be the top of the third wave move to the upside, and then we should get a fourth wave move, and the fifth wave should put us again near all-time highs or above previous all-time highs by the end of the year. And if history shows us anything, it shows us that the altcoins always get an altcoin season, and it's only a matter of time until it happens. I know I've been yapping for too long, so I'm gonna leave it at this. And also keep in mind, we are oversold on the daily chart, and Cardano is at like 74 cents. The last time it was oversold on the daily was down here when it was at like 27 cents. So I still think that there's nothing to worry about right now, and I'm expecting an altcoin season in the next couple of months. And yeah, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to check out our YouTube memberships and our Patreon if you want access to all of our charts and if you want access to our daily Discord updates. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.